All right, today we're going to peel back the curtain on two of the biggest companies on the planet, Meta and Microsoft. We're going to find out what these tech titans tell the world, not in some slick commercial or a big keynote speech, but when they're actually forced to tell the truth. You know, the whole truth.
So let's just start with a really big question. What is a company worth over $1 trillion really afraid of? I mean, is it competition, hackers, maybe a market crash? What actually keeps their CEOs up at night? Well, turns out the answers are surprisingly public. You just have to know where to look.
And we're going to find those answers inside a document called the Form 10-K. Now, you can think of this thing as a mandatory corporate confessional that they have to file with the U.S. government. It is a brutally honest look at a company's health, its biggest anxieties, and its entire blueprint for the future. And that is where we're going to find our answers. So, let's start digging in.
Okay, so here's the plan. We'll start with the corporate confessional itself. Then, we'll follow the money, see how they make their billions. After that, we'll figure out what really scares these giants, look at their huge bets on the future, and then wrap it all up to see how these two companies are on two totally different paths.
All right, first up, the corporate confessional. Let's introduce our subjects.
So on one side, you've got Meta Platforms, right? The social media behemoth founded back in 2004 with a market value hitting over $1 trillion in its 2024 report. Then on the other side, you've got the elder statesman, Microsoft, founded way back in 1975. Now, for our comparison today, we're actually going to use their 2019 report, and there's a good reason for this. It captures them at a really interesting moment, right before this massive growth surge, and it just perfectly highlights a fascinating strategic pivot they were making.
So to really get what they're afraid of, we first have to understand how they actually make their money. And let me tell you, their business models could not be more different.
Okay, take a look at Meta. Their financial engine is, well, it's stunningly simple. It's almost entirely advertising. I mean, a whopping 98.7% of its revenue comes from its family of apps. You know, that's your Facebook, your Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger. Everything else, all that metaverse hype you hear about, is just a tiny sliver of the pie.
Now let's flip over to Microsoft. It's a completely different story. This is a picture of pure diversification. See how no single piece of the pie dominates? Their money is spread almost evenly across three huge areas. Productivity stuff like Office, their intelligent cloud business, which is mainly Azure, and more personal computing, which covers Windows and Xbox. Three totally separate, powerful pillars.
And this table, this really tells the whole story right here. Look at Meta's apps. They're an absolute cash machine, raking in an incredible $87 billion in profit. But then look at Reality Labs, their metaverse division. It lost almost $18 billion. In a single year. That insanely profitable ad business is basically funding a monumental money-losing gamble. Meanwhile, you look at Microsoft, and all three of their big segments, all solidly in the black. Each one is a profitable powerhouse all by itself.
Okay, now let's get to the really juicy part of the confessional, the risk factor section. This is where, by law, these companies have to tell their investors everything that could go horribly wrong.
So it's Meta's biggest fear. It's existential. And it comes from the outside. They say it right here, plain as day. They're worried that European regulators could basically tear up the legal rulebook they use to transfer user data. And if that happens, they might not be able to offer Facebook and Instagram in Europe at all. This isn't just about losing to a competitor. This is about their entire business model potentially becoming illegal.
Microsoft's fears? Totally different. They're not as worried about governments. They're worried about other companies, specifically companies like Apple and Google. They point directly to what they call the vertically integrated model. You know, where a single company controls everything, the phone, the operating system, the app store. Microsoft's great fear is being locked out of those powerful ecosystems that they just don't control. It's a classic, straight-up fear of the competition.
But, you know, despite all those differences, they do have some shared nightmares. Both of them are terrified of losing their best employees. They're constantly worried about massive cyber attacks or their data centers going down. They're scared of messing up a big acquisition. And yeah, they're worried about global economic chaos. On these things, it turns out all giants are pretty vulnerable.
Okay, so we know how they make money, and we know what they're afraid of.
So where are they placing their biggest bets for the future? Let's take a look at where all those billions are actually going. Meta's filing lays it out pretty clearly. They're pouring cash into a few key areas. Generative AI, obviously, building out what they call the discovery engine, the metaverse and wearables, of course, threads, and then monetizing everything. It's all geared toward one thing: creating the next generation of social platforms.
And just to put a giant exclamation point on that metaverse bet, look at this number. That's a loss of $17.7 billion in 1 year. This is not a side project, folks. This is a bet the company moonshot, and it is being funded entirely by the profits from your scrolling on Facebook and Instagram.
Microsoft's language, again, totally different. They're not talking about building new worlds. They're talking about leading in the new era of the intelligent cloud and intelligent edge. So, what on earth does that actually mean? Well, it's about becoming the foundational plumbing for the entire digital economy. Everything from those massive cloud data centers to the smart devices we all hold in our hands.
And their investment strategy follows that vision exactly. You can break it down into 4 main pushes. 1, dominate the cloud with Azure. 2, weave AI into every single product they sell. 3, own the future of the workplace with things like Office 365. And 4, redefine gaming so you can play anywhere on any device. It's basically a multi-front war to dominate the digital world as we know it today.
So, after digging through these corporate confessionals, what's the big takeaway here? We're looking at 2 giants on 2 completely different paths.
Yeah, it really all boils down to this. On one side, you have Meta. Their entire centralized ad business is funding a huge, risky, maybe all-or-nothing bet to create a new world, the metaverse. Then on the other side, you've got Microsoft, a diversified, enterprise-focused company that's betting billions to power the world we already have with its cloud and AI.
And that leaves us with one last big question. One company is betting everything on creating a new world for you to live in. The other is betting on powering the one you're in right now. So think about it. Which future are you actually living in? Thanks for joining us for The Explainer.